Good morning. Thanks for showing up. You're the hardy ones who showed up at the earliest session of day 2. I'm Josh Penrod, VP of UX at Ancestry, where I manage a team of around 30 designers. I have some prototypers, researchers, and copywriters.
And I'm Kendall Hulet. I'm the SVP of Product at Ancestry, or at least I was until about 3 weeks ago when I decided to leave. I'm going to go join a startup soon. So,
yes, our whole talk is about us working together, and this is
pretty awesome
during the course of writing
this
thing, he decides to leave. So this is actually like our official last.
Oh, and for the record, we did not intend to dress alike. This just was like a sheer coincidence. So anyway.
I think it's super appropriate because our title is UX+PM BFFs, right? And we're basically twins. So,
as you can tell by the height difference, the beard.
It's very similar.
Yes.
So shout out to Eleanor Kramer on our team who just dropped sparkle magic all over this presentation for us.
So, we have been working, as Wade said, together for about 12 years, on and off, a couple different stints. And, we started off in very junior roles at Ancestry. I was an associate product manager when I started at Ancestry. Josh was a user researcher when I met him. And we've kind of progressed over time into VP roles. And, I think I attribute a lot of that to the stellar partnership that we've developed and built over time. We've invested a lot in that, and that's kind of what we want to talk about today, is how that partnership grew over time and what we've learned along the way. As Mike Davidson mentioned yesterday, he talked about the importance of talking more about soft skills as an industry, even though we don't love the term necessarily, but I think that's really important. So that's kind of what we're going to talk about today, is some of these things that help you build great partnerships.
Yeah, we think the best product teams are strong collaborations between product managers, developers, and designers, probably marketers as well. But the relationship between product and UX is one that we think you especially need to focus on and especially need to get right, because you work so closely together, and the boundaries aren't always that clean. And so it's something you just really need to work on.
And just to call out, we could make a whole highlight reel of all the crappy partnerships that we've been a part of and the things that we've done wrong and all the mistakes that we've made. Definitely, we're massively human. We're going to probably dwell less on our screw-ups, although we will talk about a couple of them. So anyway, bear with us, I guess.
Yeah, so we're going to tell some stories from our career. But to do that, we want to kind of set the stage.
So Ancestry is actually the world's largest genomics business. Doing consumer genomics, which is basically DNA testing.
Which is crazy when you consider that the company started as a genealogy company.
And we'll get into that. So taking a DNA test is super easy. You just spit in a tube, and then you relax. And while you're relaxing, we're processing your DNA, extracting it, and running 700,000 SNPs through a supercomputer, comparing it to millions of other samples to find out what makes you unique.
By the way, we do actually have official numbers on how many gallons of spit that we have collected over the years.
It used to be a bathtub. It graduated to like a small pool or something.
And then, yeah.
So anyway,
and
then you make amazing discoveries, kind of like this.
Yeah, so you take a DNA test and we deliver you this kind of an experience where we can tell you your genetic ethnicity. We can even tell you historic communities that you are connected to based on your DNA, and also living people that you're connected to. So 4 million people have taken those DNA tests. And so Ancestry now has about 1,400 employees in 7 different countries. And it hasn't always been that way.
So we're going to take you way back in time. Can anyone, based on these clues, tell me what year this was? This is when Ancestry started. 84, that's really close. 83, yes.
Bookended it.
1983. Magnum PI, so awesome. So yeah, Ancestry actually started as a genealogy print publishing company. So they're making books about family history and all this stuff. And that was cool, but then someone came along and said, hey, you know what we ought to do is put them on CD-ROM. This is crazy technology, and people could then search on their computer and look through the data. Wouldn't that be cool? And it was really cool, because this is what it used to be like to do family history. You'd fly from one place to another, and you'd end up there at a county courthouse or a library looking through the stacks, the catalog, trying to find a roll of microfiche or microfilm that might have the pertinent information that you were looking for about your ancestry. So you can imagine what changed when Ancestry hit the scene.
Yeah, so Ancestry.com launched in 1996, and we think it was probably first viewed on this exact computer. And so you can imagine going from this world where you had to travel all over to do things to it. You can imagine a world where you could sit at home in your pajamas and search.
And imagine being blown away by the incredible UI here.
I like it. So the promise of Ancestry was that you could do those searches, you could find historical documents that were so sparkly, and that would tell you stories about your ancestors.
And this is where we enter the scene. So years 2002, 2003, and I got hired as an associate product manager to work on search at Ancestry. And that was basically what Ancestry was a search engine for dead people, right? And so
to find dead people, not for dead people to search. We tried that one earlier.
Important clarification.
And the business model did not work out.
Big pivot.
Yeah, we pivoted.
So anyway, this is the actual search results page when I joined the company. And you can see it's like this Boolean search system. So you'd enter in search terms. It would give you the exact number of hits that you had in this particular database. Not super appealing to a broad market, you might imagine. So I came in trying to work on a relevance ranked search engine. And so I made a prototype. We were working on different things, and I was observing a few weird problems that were keeping me up at night. So the first one was, to make a really great relevance ranked search, you need a lot of data to triangulate on. So there's a lot of John Smiths in the world. If you type in John Smith, you're going to get really terrible results. But there's only so many John Smiths who are married to Sally in 19 whatever, who had a kid named blah, right? And so if you had enough information, you could really triangulate. But people weren't filling out really good queries. So that was problem number one. Second thing that I thought was really weird, I was looking through the search logs, and I saw people are entering the same information like every day. They're doing the same query over and over again. It's kind of weird. I didn't really know Josh very well at the time. He was working in a different department. He was a user researcher. But I was like, hey, he probably knows something about our users, and I need to know more about what's going on here and why people are doing this. So I went over to Josh and asked him to help me out.
Yeah, so I was working on a different project. I was working on a project for like the first run experience for new customers, right? And since we were primarily a search engine at that point, it was a search problem as well. But I was noticing a weird search behavior too. So I would be doing usability testing. Kendall's looking at analytics. I'm doing usability testing. And I see over and over that people come in and they type in their own name. Joshua Reese Penrod, born Simi Valley, California, 0 results. Right? And they would do, everybody did this over and over, 0 results, 0 results, 0 results.
And it's kind of maddening because we don't want you to search for living people because, as I said, we're good at dead people. That's what we do.
So yeah, we tried to solve that with like copy changes. I did not think of the one of dead people search engine.
Right.
And that might have solved it. We didn't get there. We tried things close to that. Only search. We ended up on this big search for your ancestor. But we'd make these little tweaks and not see the behavior change. And it got frustrating. I mean, we got to the point where we thought about saying, only search for dead people. That didn't seem that welcoming. Only search. Might convert, I don't know, we'll see. Only search, don't search for yourself, we mean it. And it would make these minor changes. That was my favorite. Maybe a ticking, a scroller kind of a thing.
You can see a microcopy here where we're like, hey, enter as much info as you can. Even a guest can help. We're like trying all this stuff to get people to put in more information.
So I found out in the research why they were doing it. And it was because they were like coming and kicking the tires the first time they used the site. They wanted to know if it worked. So I'd ask them, why are you searching for yourself? And they would say, well, I know I exist, and you don't know I exist, so you suck. Fair enough, right? But that was the strategy they had. And so we really worked hard to like force them in a better direction.
And I think we were like, this is just a lesson learned along the way. We were talking about all these little optimizations. What we really needed was something much bigger, right? And so sometimes you get stuck in this optimization game when you just need to think more broadly.
So we had an epiphany, and that was to use judo, right? So instead of trying to push against the customer, we decided we would use their momentum to get them to a better place. I know the slide looks like we were going to use their momentum to like smash their faces into the ground. That's not what we were doing. We wanted to use that momentum of, I want to search for myself to get them to a good search result. And so what we did was say, go for it. Do that. Put your own name in. So we had a page that said, start with yourself. And then the next screen, say, OK, what about your parents? What about your grandparents? And in just a couple of clicks there, they had created like a small family tree, which, one, let them start with themselves like they wanted to, but two, gave us a really great search query that could get them a successful result.
And you know, I had just come over from Monster.com, is where I was working before on their search system. And you know, I was talking to Josh about why are they doing the same search over and over again. He was telling me, well, when I asked them, they say, well, I'm just looking for new content, because you're adding new content all the time. And I'm like, man, this is so stupid. You know, like, of course, at Monster, we had these job agents. So if you were looking for a product manager job, you'd type that in, create a little search agent, and we'd look in the background for you and then email you when there was a new job, right? That was interesting. And so same kind of thing, right? Well, gosh, let's not make them do that over and over again. Let's go search in the background. If we can collect all this information, we could really do that great. And so that led to something that we called the shaky leaf, which was kind of this push thing around search. So we put it all together, and this is after a little bit of iteration, a few years. You can kind of see what it looked like. But it actually turned into something really cool and really powerful for Ancestry's growth.
Yeah, and we want to be really clear. We're telling stories from our time working together, but in no way are we trying to take credit for all the stuff that happened. We worked with, the whole theme of what we're talking about is these great working relationships, and we worked with awesome people who did great work and helped this get to where it got to.
Yeah, amazing people, some of whom are in this room.
The amazing ones aren't in the room.
Ouch. So what did we learn from all of this?
So yeah, we learned that relationships, shout out to Rob Foster, I see you, man. That relationships trump process. And Kendall and I were not working on the same projects, right? And at the time, there was a little bit more of a silo between the departments we worked in. But we connected over trying to solve this really interesting customer problem. And so we brought to bear all the different product and UX tools you would expect of like analytics data and customer observation and business needs and customer needs and technical requirements and the customer's mental models or whatever it was. But we did that in a really fluid way where we weren't very worried about boundaries and we're just focused on let's solve some cool problems.
Yeah, and there was no, I was the search guy, right? I was working on search. There was no product team or anything around this whole family tree concept. There wasn't a roadmap around that. My roadmap was to make search better. But through our collaboration, the different lenses we brought to the problem, we actually created a whole new thing that we hadn't even conceived of before. For example, in some of the working stuff that we did together, I would actually help Josh write this user testing scripts, right? And likewise, I invited him to help me on requirements, right? And so it kind of worked together that way. Just maybe outside of what you'd say are the normal boundaries together. And I think that's all because we were focused on the customer. And when you focus on the customer, some of these other things kind of recede into the background. Let's just solve a problem together. And I don't really care who's doing what, as long as we're crushing it on solving that problem.
So to clarify just a couple of things, one, we're not saying process doesn't matter. It matters enormously. But the relationships get you past points that process wouldn't. And when we talk about relationships, we're talking about not necessarily hanging out together or those kinds of things. That's fine. That's great. But we're talking about mutual respect. In research, one of the indicators, the most powerful indicator of a high-performing team is a thing called psychological safety, which is more or less, I feel safe being me and taking risks as part of this team, which is more or less mutual respect.
Yeah, and I think as we hit on it, it's just when you respect each other and you're focused on the customer, you're feeling the sense of willingness to listen, right? And you will be listened to, right? And that is what transforms from a collaboration into true partnership, right? Okay, but we all know it's not that easy, right? Like the sausage making, getting a product to market, there's a lot of pain involved, all those things. You've all been there. So we started shifting our focus to how do we really help validate this concept, how do we refine it, and how do we make sure that we have alignment broadly across the organization around this?
So we hit the road. We went out. I wish we went out in that van. We didn't.
It would have been awesome, although our customers might have been freaked out.
I would like to see, as we pulled up in front of their homes in that van. So we went out with cross-functional teams. So we had product managers and developers and designers and marketers, and we would fly out. We went to Boston and LA and Dallas and Chicago and other places. And we went and visited customers in their homes. So we'd get out there and we'd all pack into this van, not this van, into a van, pack into a van and go visit the customers and sit in their living rooms and talk to them and observe them in their own environment. And that was incredibly powerful for building alignment. So the time together, traveling and all of that, super powerful for building alignment. But the key thing was together with the customer. So yeah,
Josh made a scrapbook.
I made a scrapbook, reminiscing of our time together. Kendall was 15, you can see in that picture. Yeah.
Josh was 16.
I was for sure 18. And I have very high-tech user research equipment. Like, how weird is that? I'm sitting on her couch, like, holding a camera at her laptop. I recommend you all start doing that. So we got to go in their homes and see the artifacts they had, right? She has this big printout of her family history and the people they interacted with, all of that stuff.
I think, for me, so, we were doing super tight iterations, or at least it felt that way. Maybe after yesterday's talk where you're supposed to do this every week. Maybe this wasn't as tight, but it was every 3 weeks we were getting in a van and going on a trip and visiting customers in these different cities. And you'd have to create prototypes and do all this stuff in between. So there was a ton of hard work pouring into this. Then you'd go and you'd meet with the customer, and it really was awesome because you'd go in there and get everyone in the room. So you'd have marketing, product, UX, engineering, all sitting there together watching the customer. Maybe there's too many people, to be honest, like freak out the customer. But
we also called it the home invasion tour.
Yes.
So.
But I'll tell you one of the things that I thought was the most special from this experience. It's actually like right after we left the customer's house, we'd all pile back in the van, and the driver would be like trying to figure out where we're going next and drive us in that direction. And that was this huge opportunity for everyone to vent and debrief and talk about what just happened. What were the pain points, the things that jumped out at people? We'd argue with each other, and we'd talk about the quote of the day. We had this whole process of things that we'd write down and take notes as we went. And I'll tell you, that forced conversation in a super confined environment right after we visited a customer was amazing. It was magical because we just started aligning, right? And you do it over and over and over, and by the end of this, people were had shared vision. It was really incredible. And that was really important because when we came back to Ancestry, to the mothership, and we wanted to pitch this idea to the executive team, there's actually a little bit of resistance. But it was inevitable that we would win because we had all of the departments aligned, and people had that shared vision.
Yeah, so another thing we learned was let the customer bring you together, right? So those visits had a massive impact on our product iterations, on improving that product, and they had a massive impact on our understanding of the customer. But I think there was that even bigger impact was our alignment and how we were brought together. And the reason I say that was even bigger, obviously it made the product better, was that alignment made lots of other products better in the future as well. So there was a lasting effect from that. So we're telling you these stories from a while back, right? And we're doing that because that's where our partnership started. But we're always curious, what do people do now? And so I just wanted to give you a quick peek on how we align around the customer at Ancestry now. We still use little video cameras, like I should know. We do a weekly listening lab, right? At least weekly. Usually more than once a week. And a listening lab versus a usability test where it's unstructured. We capture customers off of the site live using Ethnio, which is a great tool. We live stream that out to the whole company. We book conference rooms so people can sit together, and we have a Slack channel so they can discuss what they're learning as they go. We do the normal, what you would expect, tactical user research. We have an on-staff recruiter, and we have 3 full-time user researchers who actually do a lot of facilitating other people becoming researchers, training and helping them to be involved in the research. And an interesting thing is we do customer home visits, but for all of our energy around that, I think we dropped the ball on that, and that kind of faded away. And we started doing that again. And those are one of the most energizing things you can do as a product team.
Yeah, it really, as I said, it really pulls the team together. One other little note here is that about 80% of our user research that we do on specific projects is actually remote, right? So the majority of it is remote. Yeah. OK, so we're going to show you one of our very first TV spots at Ancestry. And it's about the shaky leaf. And the reason we want to show it is because it really captures kind of the culmination of all of this stuff that we just talked about, this whole story kind of coming together for the customer, right? So you can see what it does for the customer. Hopefully this works.
I came here to Ancestry.com just like you. It was easy to get started. All I had to do was type in some names. My parents, my grandparents, whatever information I had. Until it happened. I got a leaf. When I clicked on it, I could actually see my grandfather's draft card from World War I and his U.S. Census from 1910. But it wasn't just records. The leaf showed me other Ancestry members' trees that connected to my grandfather. All I had to do was click a box next to their names, and they were added to my tree. And that's when things got really fun. Ancestry.com started searching for all those new names, and I got a whole lot more leaves. I saw ships' passenger lists, signed marriage records, voting registries. There were war records, newspaper stories, photographs. It sounds funny, but I could actually feel my family's past coming to life. You know, of all the stuff I learned, it was the little things that were the most interesting. The journeys that were made, the sacrifices, the thousands of things that had to happen for me to even be here. I know so much more about my family now, and in a strange way, about myself. And it all started with my first leaf.
I think we should pause and let you all recover emotionally from... It's like, there's no shame in crying. It's okay.
Yeah, so we talked about the reasons to have a great partnership, right? And I think a large part of it comes down to just having a lot of fun as you're making a great product that customers are going to love, right? And that's really important, but there's also business impact, right? And you've got to have that too, or you're missing the whole boat, right? And so for us, you can see here, 80 million family trees got created, 10 billion profiles created in those trees. So this obviously had really good business impact for us. But most of all, we had a ton of fun doing it. OK, so let's talk about something that didn't go so well. You've probably never heard of this, and there's a reason. So we'll go through it. But you know, the biggest thing, as we talk about things that didn't go well, is I hired Josh Penrod to be a product manager. But that wasn't really the thing that failed.
Clarify that, please. Yeah.
But I trusted Josh so much that he had left Ancestry and went off to run UX at an investment firm. And he was about to take a job at Eventbrite, and I thwarted him and brought him back to Ancestry to take on a product role. And we were working on this thing called Mundia. And the idea here was, let's expand Ancestry's reach globally. We'll put Ancestry in every language on every continent kind of thing. And so that's what we were focused on. I trusted Josh because of our relationship. Like, I knew we had blurred the line so much between what a PM and UX person typically do that I knew he could be a great product person, and he was. So that wasn't what really went wrong. Let's talk about what you learned, and then we'll talk about kind of what went wrong.
Yeah, so that was a pretty eye-opening transition for me in a couple of ways. And one, it wasn't as hard as I expected, mostly, right? Like a lot of the skills, and I'll clarify that, PMs, don't worry. A lot of the skills that I had developed in UX transferred pretty readily. And so that was great. But there were other things that were eye-opening, like how hard they were. I wasn't quite ready to live in the world of spreadsheets that I transferred into. I still remember one time I had responsibilities I'd never had in UX. I had to figure out how to have an effective global market spend and choose which countries to focus on. Right? And like maybe my skill set was more, I'm going to fly around and interview people, and we'll see. That's not really the right solution.
It would have been awesome.
It would have been awesome. I tried to sell it, I will tell you that. And watching, like Kendall sat down with me and created this spreadsheet that was like an algorithm ranking countries by GDP and internet penetration and all these other things. It just blew my UX mind. It was awesome. But other things that were interesting or surprising were, I actually felt more accountability for the success or failure of feature launches than I had in UX. Even though I would always preach to the team like we're all accountable, I felt a lot more direct accountability as a product manager. And a funny thing started happening. I started to get a little annoyed with my UX partners. And remember, I'd been a director of UX prior to this, and I started getting annoyed with my UX partners over things that I always waved away when I was in UX, like weren't super transparent in process, delivering designs a little bit late. And it was hard for me to see where that boundary was, where my feedback should end and like the designer's ownership ended. And so it was an eye-opening thing, but it really did. I walked away from that. I went back to UX. I walked away from that with a ton of respect for both of the roles, and I actually really enjoyed both of those roles. And like for product managers, mental exercise, imagine how that would be for you to transition in the other role. If you can't give the benefit of the doubt and collaborate effectively, man, there's a lot of opportunity for stuff to go wrong in that partnership.
For sure. And I learned a lot by watching Josh kind of go through his experience as well. It was like really cool to see that empathy build. One thing that was really cool about Mundia is we built a really cool team culture, and we had a ton of fun. It wasn't super easy to get there. We had to make some personnel changes along the way, a bunch of stuff like that. But we got to this place where the team was just thriving. We had tons of mutual respect, and people were trusting each other so much, massive transparency. Like all the things that would be a high-performing team. And so that was really, really cool. In fact, it's so awesome that even years later, we still have like these reunion lunches where we go and meet with the team, the old team from all the different places that we've kind of landed in the meantime. But just because you're BFFs doesn't mean you're going to win. And this is like goes back to, we made some fundamental mistakes as we went. And one of them, I think it was probably the chief one, is that we put the business needs and the business objectives ahead of the customer needs and customer objectives, right? And so we were tasked with, go and take this international. And that's what we were trying to do. And it was all about us. And it wasn't about the customer and what the customer wanted or needed as much as it should have been. And we had a real hard time finding enough product market fit that drove the business in the right direction, right? And so eventually had to shut down Mundia, even though we all loved it.
So what we learned from that was seriously let the customer bring you together.
Yeah, we brought ourselves together. We rallied around all these cool things and whatever in this culture. But at the end of the day, that's not enough. The customer has to bring you together.
And it is super easy to lose focus on the customer. It's super easy to stop doing the kind of customer research things you should be. I had worked in customer research for years and years. I'd been a director of UX, and I did not do enough customer research when I was product manager of this project. It is really easy to lose focus on that.
Okay, so we talked yesterday in the panel, we heard about all these different Venn diagrams of how you like slice up roles and responsibilities, right? And everyone has their favorite model. We just pulled this up on a Google search. You can see there's a million of them. This one really jumped out at me. I've seen this a lot. I don't know about you.
It's the best one.
Yeah, so it's really important that you understand roles and responsibilities. And we're not going to really dive into that because I actually think every company and maybe even every team kind of defines their own based on the skills of the team, the culture of the company, whatever. So I don't think there's a one-size-fits-all kind of model here. But I think that the key point for me is it's how much are you focused on your territory and who's doing what, right? And you just don't want to get overly fixated on that.
Yeah, again, like process, roles and responsibilities matter, and having them clear can reduce conflict, right?
Like we've seen, I think, that the best teams blur the boundaries without conflict, right?
Absolutely. But that discussion around, like, where does stay out of my circle, kind of a thing that happens a lot, it reminds me of that saying of good fences make good neighbors. But there's something about that that bugs me, because you hear that and you're like, yeah, we should really clarify them. But that phrase, mostly what people are referring to, that's a reference to a Robert Frost poem, right? The Mending Wall, if you remember that. And he's actually arguing, it's like a polemic against fences. It's not an endorsement. And so what he said was...
Are you ready for a poetry reading, everyone? Did you expect that when you came here today?
Let me get to a dramatic place. He only says good fences make good neighbors. Spring is the mischief in me, and I wonder if I could put a notion in his head. Why do they make good neighbors? Isn't it where there are cows? But here there are no cows. Before I built a wall, I'd ask to know what I was walling in or walling out, and to whom I was like to give offense. Something there is that doesn't love a wall. So good fences make good neighbors where cows may come over and trample your fields, right? We should not be cows trampling fields at work.
We should be good neighbors.
We should be good neighbors, right? And he says here at the end, something there is that doesn't love a wall. And I'll tell you what doesn't love a wall. What doesn't love a wall? Communication doesn't love a wall. Relationships don't love a wall. Mutual respect.
And I would actually argue the customer doesn't love a wall.
Yeah.
Like, there's times where I've been able to kind of see our org chart illustrated in the UI of our website, right, in the IA.
And you end up shipping your walls.
Yeah, customers don't love that.
So
we've learned a few things about managing over the years, and I would say that, chief amongst them is try not to trample the crops, right, of your neighbors. I've seen more teams fail due to not working well with others than I have from lack of skills or talent, those types of things, right? And so these are a few tips that we've collected along the way. You've probably heard them a million times. But if you want respect, you got to give respect.
Yeah, back to that concept of psychological safety. If I know you don't respect me, how can I respect you? If I do, I'm endorsing your assessment of me. Like, I must not be respectable. Life doesn't work that way. That goes back, anyway, yeah, go ahead.
And you got to give people the benefit of the doubt, right? You assume good intent. And I think, Josh definitely saw this when he was walking a mile in the other shoes, right? It's like, whoa, there's some different challenges and different pressures that we're all facing. And you got to realize that. And one way to realize that is through transparency, right? If you're always transparent about what you're solving for, what's motivating you, what you're afraid of, and why, then it's very obvious to your partners what's going on in your mind. And that will lead to better partnerships because you're not guessing or telling a story about why this person's behaving this way, right? So transparency is super key.
And speaking of failures really quick, just seeing the list reminded me of many years ago when I had a playlist I had made that was called Theme for an Ultimate and Inevitable Confrontation that I would listen to before I had meetings with a specific product manager. And I'm thinking that wasn't my best bet now.
Yeah, maybe not. maybe building a wall there. So we actually did a survey as we started preparing this talk of our teams, and we asked them, think back to your best partnerships, right? What made them special? What made them stand out?
And we loved this answer. We thought it summed it all up. Mutual respect, blurred boundaries of who does what, willingness to experiment with poorly communicated ideas, united focus to solve customer pain points, not settling for mediocrity, and large doses of humility and collaboration.
So we invite you to go out and build some great partnerships. Have a lot of fun along the way. Thanks.
Thanks.